Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Worthy Podcast. This is Annie Gardner, where we're going to talk about boldness meets purpose. Join us as we explore powerful stories of faith, resilience, and courage, embracing the challenges that shape us and stepping confidently into the calling God has placed on our lives. Let's have the conversations that truly matter. Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited today to have my cousin Steve Penate on the podcast. Why? Because I believe that he walks in the boldness and in the calling that God placed on his life with authority. So join me in welcoming him today. Hi.
Hey, I am excited. You said Penate.
Well, I speak Spanish. When people don't say it like that, I cringe a little bit, but whatever. It's fine.
Do you think that most people that know you speak Spanish or no?
No, they don't.
Like, it's crazy. A lot of people don't know I'm completely fluent in Spanish.
Is it because you stutter or because they've never heard you speak?
Probably because they only hear me speak in English. My
Yeah.
content is in English.
Yeah.
I talk
You don't
to
have
my
content
wife
in
in
Spanish.
English, to my children in English, and so I don't think people hear it enough.
One of the things that John gives me a really hard time on is that Joey doesn't speak Spanish, but really, I think most of our kids don't. Spanish was my first language, as was it
Yeah,
yours.
for sure.
So I didn't speak English until I was 5 when I went to kindergarten, which is when my mom also learned how to speak English, but she has a big accent still. Sorry, Mom, but I mean,
Yeah.
she does.
No, for sure.
She does. And then when she speaks Spanish, people are shocked that she speaks Spanish at the grocery store, which I think is hilarious because I'm like, she has an accent when she speaks English.
Well, I mean, your mom could possibly pass as European, maybe.
Yeah,
So
and I think because of the Spanish descent. But yeah, I think it's funny. When did you learn how to speak English?
honestly, I don't know. But I asked my mom. Oh, no, hold on. English? Yeah. I asked my mom how I learned how to speak English,
Yeah.
and just watching cartoons, Saturday mornings,
Yeah.
television. But in school, you really catch it really,
Really
fast.
fast.
Correct. So she always told me she really focused on me learning Spanish, knowing that English would just come naturally and automatic.
It between telenovelas and cartoons, I think that's how I remained fluent. And honestly, like if someone out there wanted to learn how to speak Spanish,
Yeah.
soap operas in Spanish or TV in Spanish, period, is probably the best thing to watch.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
so funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
So real quick, I remained fluent because we went to
Church.
church in Spanish.
Yes.
And so I learned how to read in Spanish at church, and
Me too.
I really learned how to understand it better because everyone spoke Spanish at church.
I remember that everyone had a Spanish Bible when I would go to church, and I couldn't read it. So I made it a point to learn how to read. And I can write and read in Spanish. And when I was in college, I tested out of all the Spanish courses. It's like cleft out of it. So I got like 30 credits just by testing out. My parents couldn't believe it because
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm honestly impressed with myself that I know how to write it
Yeah.
and read it fluently.
You should do more
you hand me a
content.
book and I can read it all in Spanish. It's crazy. Like, it shocks me kind of. I'm like, well, I do know Spanish.
When you preach, do you preach in Spanish ever?
I mean, I have before, but it's I should be practicing it a lot more because you kind of lose the fluency
Yes.
of it.
Yes.
And so I think it's very different when you're talking with your mom versus when you're wanting to speak fluently and eloquently and
Well, because it's Spanglish. I don't. John's like, you're always back and forth. I'm like, that's true. That's also my brain. I'm always like all over the place
Yeah.
and back and forth and everything. John was telling me when he was at my mom's the other day that my mom was sharing with him how we lived. I don't know if you remember this, in the same apartments growing up.
that was when
We lived in Commerce
built in
before the
Commerce,
earthquake.
correct. Yeah, I
Before
remember
the
that.
earthquake.
Yep.
And
All of us lived together. I mean, it was literally like a zoo of people in a small little apartment.
Well, no, not the same apartment though. The same complex.
Sorry,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I told John, because we're only 2 months apart, and so people, I'm like, we grew up together. I grew up with boys because there's you, and then on my mom's side, and then
Yeah,
you
it's all
only have
boys.
brothers.
Yeah.
And then on my mom's side, there's only boys, and so I am who I am because I grew up with a bunch of boys, and so I was excited when you said yes, I'll come on because I know you. I grew up with you. And so sometimes I laugh, well, I always laugh really hard when you minister and you make fun of yourself about like how you were nerdy and you played the
I
trumpet
really was nerdy,
and
huh?
sturdy. And then John's like, nerds rule the
That's
world.
funny.
Because
Because John was a nerd
John's
too.
he's still a nerd. He's like the cutest nerd ever. Um, but I want to talk about that because I think people see you now and look at what you've built. I mean, I'm genuinely so proud of you because I know where we came from, but I know little Steve, like little Steve who wouldn't go on a ride at Disneyland, or when I would make you go, you would
I hate
cry.
roller coasters.
I know. I'm like, you want to go to Six Flags? No, you don't. Like, you would
I
cry
want to
when
walk
you're on
around the
the.
experience, the environment,
I
you
don't
know?
go with John
Maybe I'll ride
anymore.
one or two, you
No,
know?
he'll make me go on all the rides. I
Oh, he
won't.
loves
I
that
will
stuff, huh?
not go on
That's
anymore
funny.
with him. But you did have a stutter, and I think in our teenage years, I remember you already lived in Arizona. I still lived in California, and I remember coming to visit, and you wanted to be a weatherman. Do you
I
remember
did,
that?
yeah. How funny. You remember that. That's crazy. Few people actually know that. You know that?
And I
I
would,
wanted to be a meteorologist on the news, though, you know?
yeah,
Like,
I know.
yeah.
And inside of me, I was like, but you
You know, you
stutter.
stutter. You're going to say it's going to rain, you know? That's funny.
And I just thought it was endearing because you had there was no boundary. You were like, oh, this is what I want to do. And you would stand in front of like the weather channel and be excited and be like, this is what I want to
That's
do.
funny. By the way, I still love reading up on the weather and radars. Like on my phone, I have like countless radar apps.
That's
I know
so
it's funny.
cool. Yeah. Okay, so that is what you wanted to do. And then I remember you were driving and you introduced me to the first extra long cheese coney at Sonic because in LA they didn't have Sonic.
That's funny.
And you would be driving and I wasn't driving yet. I didn't learn how to drive until I was 18. So you were driving before me. But we both went to college together.
Yes, we did.
We
Arizona
didn't
State. We're Sun Devils.
we didn't graduate at the same time.
I stayed a little longer. Well, that's because my first few years probably weren't full of education.
Which is wild to me because, okay, our freshman year, you lived in the dorms. I didn't. That was the grace of God that my dad was so strict. I have the epitome of the Latino dad, and he didn't let me do
He's like, you're going to stay
anything.
home.
Yes. And I was wild, but I would go to the dorms. And honestly, the dorms are gross. The dorms are gross.
They were pretty nasty.
I have a college son now, and he doesn't live in a dorm anymore because I'm like, they're so disgusting.
They are,
And they
honestly.
make the kids live there their freshman year.
Yeah.
I don't know why. So we
And
went,
small, too. Remember how small it was?
and
I
you
mean,
share
it
a
was
bathroom.
Like a
Like,
box. I
it's
know,
gross.
it was
It's
crazy.
gross. But we went to ASU, graduated from Arizona State University, and then our lives kind of took different paths. You were always plugged into the church. And what I admire having a son is that you always honored your mom. And I want to talk about that because even as a teen, you were honoring. You know, the lie is that your teens are going to be rebellious and they're not going to love you or they're not
Sure.
going to want to be around you. But you were not like that. Till this day, you're still super close to your mom.
Very.
My heart's
I'm a mama's
desire.
boy.
Yeah. I'm like, please, Lord, please.
Actually, I just called her before this
I
podcast,
know.
or she called me before this podcast.
So that's like my heart's desire as a mom is like, what did your mom foster in you that you now still have that with her relationally and that you honor her?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it really has to do with the fact that she was a single mom. and so and all of us were boys, me and my brothers, and so we were extra, I would say, protective
Yeah.
of her and
Mhm.
so on. And so, my mom always says, "Hey, I never remarried because I never wanted another man to frown upon my kids."
Mm.
And so she always battled with this thought that uh, with her having so many kids, that any man would kind of be, "Hey, I like you, but man, you have a zoo of children here
Mhm.
behind you," and so on. And so she couldn't live
Mm.
with the fact of another man not treating her kids like if they were theirs.
Yeah.
Maybe one day she'll be on the podcast and like share more on like her um on her um uh uh process with that and so on.
Yeah.
But so I think that a lot of it has to do with that her being a single mom.
Yeah.
We were just extra close to her. Number one. Number two, she was very involved. So my mom was a housekeeper. She
Mm.
cleaned homes for 25 years.
Mhm.
25 years she was out there cleaning houses. And so, but it's crazy because looking back, okay, looking back, she would leave the house sometimes at 6 a.m. I mean, super early and so
Yeah.
on. She would clean multiple homes, race home by 4 p.m., for 5 p.m., make us dinner, and then she would race us out to Little League
Yeah.
to practice uh, our baseball games, and so she was all in. I mean,
Mhm.
completely in on that. And then, lastly, third is this: she raised us in the house of God, and so I still remember being under a pew during all night um, vigils.
Mhm.
I mean, 1 a.m. she's praying, 2 a.m. she's praying, 3 a.m. she's half asleep. But like here we are as kids
Yeah.
on the pews asleep. But it's crazy because as kids, you're always watching your parents.
Mhm.
You're always seeing what they do, who they are, and so on. And so my greatest memories of her is being at my games as kids,
Yeah.
and her always, I mean, constantly sneaking into our bedrooms at
Hmm.
1 a.m., 2 a.m., and like laying hands on us and just praying for us. And so those are the things that really never left me. So many times, so many times I remember we truly had no money.
Mhm.
We were raised on food stamps, and sometimes food stamps wouldn't last the whole month and so on.
Yeah.
And so countless times I still remember she would gather us, and then she would say, "Hey, let's pray that God will provide." I don't know how, I don't know who,
Mhm.
and so uh, I mean, many times, Annie, many times, like the phone would ring, and all of a sudden it's another house she has to clean in. We have extra money,
Mhm.
Many times, uh, people from church would just ring the doorbell and say, "Hey, we felt that, you know, y- uh, 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 um, uh, uh, um, we felt you guys needed groceries," and like
Yeah.
show with groceries. And so I saw my mom live out of faith
Yeah.
that always stayed with me.
Yeah.
Like every single time my mom had a need, she would never tell us about the need. She would always express how big our God is, and
Yeah.
he would always come through. And so those are the things
Yeah.
that always stayed with me, that really helped me just have a love for her, protect her, just to honor her and so on. Seeing as a single mom, she would work all day,
Yeah.
be at my games. We wouldn't have. She would just hold on to her faith. It's crazy because as an adult, we've gone through countless things as a family,
Yeah, yeah,
me and my house and so on. And I always look back. It's crazy. I always look back and say, okay, what would my mom have done?
yeah. That's
How did my mom make it by and so on? It's crazy because look at this. Nowadays, I'm gonna put some women on blast. Like nowadays,
go ahead. Be
some
spicy.
some women out there, I mean, they're so like they truly don't have concept of like what it is to have that grit. That hey, I gotta wake myself up at 4 a.m. and work all day, and guess what? I'm still gonna show up, put my kids in,
Yeah,
sports or in youth group and
yeah.
so on, and just like go all out and be faithful at home,
Yes, yeah.
and
It's
and
wild because I watched like my grandma, our grandma and your mom are praying moms. I mean, grandma would come over sometimes and sleep over and wake up in the middle of the night to pray, and I didn't grow up that way. But then your mom, my aunt, she would come to my house often when I lived there. I was a single mom also for a long time. And it makes me emotional because you said that when you needed money, you would pray and she would get work. And so I worked full time. I bought a house, but the money that you had to have extra, like I always wanted, like I remember when I bought my house with you, I was like, if I can't live in this beautiful neighborhood, I'm not buying a house. I'll rent there, but I'm not having my son grow up
that's right.
with
You wanted
how
a
I
certain
grew up.
neighborhood,
I
yeah.
wanted him to have the things that like I desired, that I knew that I can provide, that the Lord could provide. And you're like, you're the pickiest person ever, but the Lord provided a house.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
then when Christmas was coming along, or any holiday that I needed money, tires, I remember I would do photography on the side. And I'm like, Lord, I don't know. Tires are so expensive for a car, but you're going to provide. And people would call, hey, do you have some time to do family photos this weekend? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes. And so now I tell John, I never went without. I worked full time, and on the weekends that I didn't have Joey, I did photography on the side. I worked all the time in my, now that I'm 41, 20s and 30s. I worked way over 50 hours a week. And now that Joey's older, even sports, like what you're saying, and I think that I think that social media corrupts the true meaning of like what it is to be. I've talked about this in other podcasts, like a stay-at-home mom, because they see like luxury or a kitchen that's beautiful and clean. But I always try to remind people, don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle.
Yeah.
Like my husband is 54 years old. I'm 41. I did not have this house when I was 23 years old. I did not live like this when I was 24 years old. I was praying that we would have tires. I was only feeding Joey and I. So, like the groceries, your mom had 4 kids.
4 kids
And so
in her 30s. Imagine that.
no, I
It's
can't, because
crazy.
right now, I was just telling Esther the other day, when I get tired, I don't have kids at home. I'm like, oh my gosh, Lord, give me some endurance, because imagine all these moms that have kids to feed and they're cooking breakfast, lunch, dinner. And no, the house doesn't always look clean, but that's to me, that's ministry. Like the ministry begins at home,
Hmm.
and your mom's ministry was with you because the fruit shows in all of you. All of you have beautiful wives, beautiful homes, like the family. And I'm
By the
not talking
grace of
about
God.
materialistic things.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like your daughters, like your fruit. It's like my favorite thing to go to. For me, Joey's almost 18, but like he's my baby. Like the way your mom sees you, I'm like,
Yeah.
Lord, please, I want that relationship one day.
But again, I think that a lot of that really comes down to we were raised in a Christian home where my mom just literally surrounded us with faith. Check this out because I haven't really like talked about this anywhere, but one of the reasons, obviously there were many reasons, but one of the reasons why my dad left us was because my mom wanted to raise us in a Christian home,
Mm.
and my dad did not want anything to to uh, do with that. This is crazy because as a kid,
Yeah.
okay, as a
Yeah.
kid, uh, uh, my dad would literally beat my mom when she found out we went to church.
That's wild.
And so there were there were many Sundays when my mom would have us dressed as if we're headed to the park.
Oh, wow.
Okay, the night prior, she would hide our church clothes in the trunk of the car. So my dad's in the living room. She would say, "Okay, we're headed
Wow.
to the park," and then we would leave the house. And in the parking lot at the church, we would get dressed, and then we would go to church in the morning. And then after church, we would dress
Gee.
back into our park clothes. We would swing by the park for about a half hour and so
Yeah.
on, and then head home.
Wow.
And so it's a can you imagine this? Like the price my mom had to pay for
Hmm.
her faith.
Yeah.
The price my mom had to pay to to raise us in a Christian home. One of the last memories I have of my dad as a kid was her was her on the ground by the kitchen table as he's kicking her. It's literally one of the last memories I have of my dad as a kid kicking her. And so people ask me, Steve, you know, how are you so bold about your faith?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
Why do you love your mom, with this vicious love and so
Hmm.
on? Well, it's because, mm, it, I'm able to live a faith today that my mom paid a high price
Nice for
for.
yeah.
And so it's like looking back and who I am now and and where we've been able to come, it's because my mom truly paid
Yeah.
a high price
Yeah.
for the faith I'm able to live out today.
That's wild. Yeah, because you're a man. You're not you're a man. The epitome of a man. You're a provider, you're a protector, you're an entrepreneur, business, and then you speak into people. So you didn't have your dad to teach you how to be a man. You know, how is it that you steward yourself as a man? Because I mean, I'm here watching, right? I see how you are as a man. You're a leader at church, you lead your family, you provide, you work, there's grit. So I know that your mom raised you and instilled that in you. How do you keep going and being the man of God that you are? Because there is a difference. Because there's a lot of single girls out there and they see Steve and they see John. Oh, if I can just marry a pilot, my life would just be so great. I would just be so happy as a wife. Oh, if I just find a man like Steve, look at how happy he is all the time. And, he owns a building and he's working. And those are highlight reels because marriage is awesome and it's work. It's work, it's intentionality.
Hmm.
But how do you balance being a man of God and providing for your wife, who is my favorite. I love Esther. So, for the listeners and viewers, when Steve started dating Esther, he dated her for a long time.
For a long
A
time.
long time.
3 years, I think it was.
I felt like it was longer.
No, three
3 years?
years, one engaged, so like total four before
And
marriage,
I
I guess.
remember I was like, I don't know what is taking you so long to propose, but we're going to be friends even if you don't marry her. Like, that's my friend now.
That's funny.
And then when you did propose, I cried forever. I was so happy. I don't know if you know this. I was living in my condo in Litchfield before I bought my house. and you called me because I couldn't be at
Oh,
your
that's right.
engagement
That was before.
because
Yeah.
you were proposing in Tempe,
Yeah, in Tempe.
and you were calling to tell me, and I was like, so happy that, yes, she's family. But now that you steward that, how do you balance being the man of God and the husband while stewarding so much?
Um, I don't know if I would call it balance, because I would say that a lot of time I'm unbalanced with things.
Yeah,
Sometimes I put too much time into my work.
yeah.
Sometimes I think I think I'm spending, even though I don't know if like this sounds weird or not, too much time at home, and I'm neglecting the business. And sometimes I'm spending too much time at church,
Yeah.
and I'm neglecting my home and or my business. And so, I think it's in seasons.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I really do is I prioritize what's most important in every season. And so
Mm-hmm.
obviously my family, my wife, daughters, they'll always be first, no
Yeah.
matter what season like it is, and so on. But sometimes like business will pull me more,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes my leadership position at church will pull me more. And so I think that there's a proverb. I think it's in Proverbs 13. Is it, Nate? I forget what it is. Nate, look it up real quick. But it says something like this. It says that actually, you know what? Look at this, because it's going to kill me
Mm-hmm.
real quick. So it's um watch. It's right here. Okay, it's in Proverbs right here. Hold up a second, because it's important. Because look at this. So many people live life
Mm-hmm.
and never live it understanding what season of life they're in.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's true.
uh and so like watch this. Watch what it says here. It says it right here. I got it right here. Okay, look at this. I got it right here. It's in it's in Proverbs chapter 10
Mm-hmm.
and verse verse number 5 in the Passion translation, which I love reading the Proverbs in that translation, but it means the same in any translation. It says this: know the importance of the season you're in,
Mm-hmm.
and a wise person you'll be. But what a waste when an incompetent person sleeps through his day of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So so what it says is this: is that life will always be about seasons.
Yeah.
It's always about seasons. And so operating in wisdom is understanding what season of life you're currently in.
Yeah.
So for example, there are seasons for someone that is launching a business, let's say. Well, it's probably wise to speak with your wife. Hey, I'm launching a business. This is going to be intense. I might have some longer days.
Yeah.
And so together, you're in unity about the season you're in. That, hey, this season launching a business, it's going to require so much more of me
Yeah.
towards my business because I'm launching a business, etc., etc. So when I talk about, or when people talk about balance,
Mm-hmm.
I view it more as what season of life are you in.
Yeah. That's good.
Okay, because according to the season you're in, such will be the output or the focus uh, 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 um, of life in that season. And so, one of the things that I continually do is this: I communicate with Esther,
Mm-hmm.
hey, what season we're in. For example, there was a time when business was slower.
Yeah.
It was a lot slower. So, I communicated with her. I said, hey, I'm really stressed right now, and I feel the pressures of a slow season in business right now. It'll be like this for the next few months. So if I'm not all there because I'm focused
Yeah.
on work and so on, just understand the season we're in right now.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
so when we talk about balance, I view it more as wisdom comes understanding what season you're in. And so, okay, another example,
Yeah.
I'm in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a real estate agent, okay, that wanted to put more efforts, more energy, more mental space into her business.
Yeah.
And so she wasn't. And so her business was really slow. So she comes to me and says, "Hey Steve, you know, I, I don't think that I'm doing well. I feel like a failure.
Mm.
Business is just really slow. You know, maybe this isn't for me." Like, I mean, she was just really beating herself up.
Yeah.
So I stopped her. I said, "Hey," I'm all like, "Wait a second. You got to understand what season you're in. You are a new mom to a 3-month-old
Oh.
baby,
Mm-hmm.
trying to compete with a single guy that's 26 that can work from 1 a.m. until
Yeah.
12 midnight if he wants to,
Right.
doesn't have to sleep, has no responsibilities but just, their business and so on. But you have a family.
Yes.
Like, you have to understand what season you're in and give yourself the grace
That's good.
for the season you're in. And that's when you're able to operate in wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we talk about balance, I view it more as, just really understanding what season you're in, because some things will require more of you in certain seasons.
Yeah. That's
I
really
don't know if
good.
like that answered the actual
No,
question,
yeah. I mean, you're talking about balance and how the question was like, how do you balance being a man of God and stewarding all that you do? And I like that you talked about Proverbs and you looked it up in the Passion Translation. And I'm going to sidebar, like, I'm going to go on a different tangent with that because
But
when,
okay, hold up a second. Before you go into that, real
yeah,
quick. But I do have three non-negotiables though.
okay, what are they?
Okay, and then I don't know if like this is really like what I call balance.
Yeah,
Okay, but I do three non-negotiables
okay,
every single day. First thing in the morning too. This is just a personal thing. Okay,
yeah,
I literally do these things first thing in the morning. Number one,
mm-hmm,
I spend time with God. Non-negotiable. Okay. Number two, I do some form of exercise. Sometimes at the gym. Sometimes I'll do a YouTube video.
yeah,
If I woke up late or I'm not feeling well and so on, I go for a walk, go in my garage, some type of movement. Okay.
okay,
And number three, I always try to spend time every single morning, uh, uh, every morning with my girls. And
okay,
so look at this. So it's spiritual,
yes,
it's it's physical,
mm-hmm,
and it's my family.
yeah,
Okay. The rest of my day could crumble, could suck, could be horrible, but the most important things in my life I already did.
yeah, that's great. I
and
love
s-
that.
and so literally I could lose everything, but if I have those three things, I can build back up.
Yeah,
If I have God, I can build back up. If I have my health, I can build back up. If I have my family, I can build back up. Those three things I would say are the only things I balance, I guess.
yeah,
But
because
I would view
you're
them
very
as,
diligent at those things.
yes, as prioritizing them.
Yes,
And so after those things, I go into whatever season I'm in.
yeah. I think that there's people always. Oh,
My seat just fell. But go ahead. We'll cut to, to you real quick. Go.
okay. I think that there is you talk about discipline and your non-negotiables. I think that nowadays people are like, "Oh, I'm all into biohacking right now and like our health and everything
Yeah.
because I want to be optimal and I want to get John optimal. And when you listen to worldly things, because I listen to, I want to know what the world is saying. I want to know what my kids are being exposed to so that when they come to me, I'm not caught off guard. I'm not like, oh my gosh, you listened to that. No, I want to be equipped
Yeah.
and I'm not going to be caught off guard. I
Yeah.
know I heard that podcast. I heard that on the radio. I read the news, but I'm all into biohacking. So I listen to different podcasts. And people talk about like meditating and looking at the sun and
That's
all these
funny.
things. And, a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, that's what makes you, just thrive. And I'm like, what is lacking is people reading their Bible and having God in their life and having Holy Spirit. And so, what I was going to talk about earlier is that before, I grew up Christian, okay? I grew up in a religious Christian household. And I walked away from having a relationship with God a long time. And I became a single mom. And then when the Lord basically brought me back to my knees and said, you need to change how you're living. And then he called me to move to Fort Worth. I was like, I don't even know how to read my Bible. Like, what do I do? And you said, okay, read a chapter of Proverbs and a chapter of Psalms in the Passion Translation and do that. And I remember I was already waking up in the morning to CrossFit, but then I added that into my routine. And that changed
That's
everything.
awesome.
And then I remember when I started, going to church and doing the different reading plans, like I was reading the Bible for the first time.
Yeah.
And right now the way I'm reading the Bible is with Esther is we're doing the read the whole Bible in a
Yeah.
year.
I'm doing it too.
I like when I read the Bible cuz my husband, John loves to read and he has already read.
I am jealous of that man of how much he reads. Like I wish I could read as fast as he does
Yeah, he's
and as
fast.
much as he does. Like I mean, he just like swallows books in one day.
Okay,
It's crazy.
another sidebar. He's shared this, and I want to talk to him about it again on the show. When Pastor Landon lived next door to him, and John was in a similar situation, but we were in different states, and he didn't know the Lord, and he had all these questions for Pastor Landon, and he was like, "Read all these books, and when you're done, come back and ask me questions."
John comes back the next day.
John came back in a week. He goes, I read them all in a week.
That's
And I came
funny.
back and I'm like, he is. So when I read, like this is his love language. I say, hey, in my encounter today, like I was reading Judges and he had said, Judges is savage. I'm like, I don't think I've read that. So then I go in my prayer closet and I'm reading it and I come out. I'm like, it's like a soap opera. People think that the Bible is boring, but it's
Yeah, it's
not.
crazy.
It is. And God is savage. And so the way, okay, so the way that you handled me, I remember, and not handled, but like took care of my heart. And when I said, I need to do something different when I'm, the way I'm living isn't working and I need Holy Spirit in my life, you're like, do this. And then I remember, because you introduced me to John
Yeah.
and you had a conversation with me. The only time you took me to the airport when I came to visit Texas, you said, all right, I already had this conversation with John. I'm going to have this conversation with you. And I'm like, all right, what are you talking about? When you date, there are boundaries. Like, you set those boundaries for us. And I'm like, I am a grown woman. And you're like, no, this is not a joke. And I'm like, oh man, this guy's serious.
That's
And
awesome.
you said, and when you go on dates, you're not drinking alcohol. And I was like, what? Who doesn't drink wine, when you go to dinner? And John also, like, it takes a strong person to steward John because he's like, no one's going to tell me what to do. But we had to set these boundaries in dating that we had neither of us set before. And so talk about like what is missing today. And the female perspective is Oh, because I hear it all the time. There's just not enough men at church. These guys, John calls them betas. And I call them
Nate's going through that actually right now. No,
snowflakes.
I'm kidding. Nate's over here like,
John calls them betas. I call them snowflakes. That they're not enough men, right? And then women are like, there's not. My perspective is different. I think that they see highlight reels on social media and they're like, they want people with titles and uniforms and the sexy thing. And I'm like, first of all, if you're in your early 20s, I would have loved to have met John in my early 20s and built, like you and Esther, built that life with your family and built generational wealth, but spiritual wealth. But the lie is, oh, look at this shiny, beautiful thing. That's who you need to date. And I'm like, You, and also, I'm a mama sons, so that my mama bear comes from a different thing. Like, Joey, you can find a wife who's gonna want to build a life with you.
mm,
You don't have to wait till you're 30 to find a wife. Like, the Lord does make women who are warriors, like Deborah, who are beautiful, like Esther, and build that life with you. So, what do you think that is lacking right now in this generation when it comes to dating for guys and girls?
man, what a question. I mean, that could be another
I
podcast, I
know.
think, you know?
And I think
Yeah,
I get this question a lot
yeah.
because I think people are like, wow, she finally met her husband at 37. And I'm like, yeah, you know why? Because I was prideful and I didn't know how to die to myself for between I had Joey at 23 and I met my husband at 37. All those years were filled with pride, with filled of I didn't know how to submit to a man. We were filled with, dating men who didn't know the Lord. Those were the years that were filled.
Yeah. Man, because I mean, we can go like a million different directions, uh,
Pick one.
when it comes to that and so on. I would say, look at this. If you're young right now, um, I guess if you're under
30.
45, you know what I'm saying?
No, I would say
I still feel
under.
young and I'm in my
I'm
40s,
still
you know what I'm
young.
saying?
I know we're the same age, but I
Okay,
think
but
under
okay.
32.
Okay, under 30 then, okay? It's important that you have people that are speaking in to your life,
Yeah.
when it comes to that area.
Yeah.
Uh, number one, number two, I would say uh, to surround yourself with like voices, whether it's podcasts, YouTube video, around being a healthy person. Like healing from your past and be because a lot of people come from, I mean, just
That's
messed up
true.
past.
That's true.
I mean, jacked up past.
That's true.
You know, they saw their parents do this and that, or single parents, divorce. I mean, so much that has happened and so on. And so, one of the perspectives that everyone should have, I would say, and this is for everyone, okay, is 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 the best way to lead yourself. Okay, the best way to lead yourself
Okay.
is to be self-aware of yourself. Okay, uh, another way of saying that is, and say this a lot when I talk about leadership, is the highest form of leadership is self-awareness. And so many people just lack self-awareness.
Yes, they do.
And so and one of the reasons why, it's because when you become self-aware, you become your greatest critiquer. I would say you're asking yourself the hard questions.
Yeah.
You're asking yourself the uncomfortable questions. You're asking yourself the awkward questions. But one of the ways to self discovery, one of the ways to heal yourself
Yeah.
is to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And so like I mean, one like
Yeah.
super basic example is, maybe you're a female
Mm-hmm.
that's extremely picky. Okay, so like you would ask yourself, okay, is this really healthy?
Yeah. I think that that's 1,000% true.
You know, is this really the wise perspective I should have about this? And so again, I mean, you could ask yourself so many questions
Yeah.
around that, but I mean, you see women in their late 40s, in their 50s, because they were picky their whole lives,
Yeah.
they're still single.
They're
Obviously, it's not the only reason, but
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying there are many examples
Yeah.
of like, and men too, obviously, but but it truly comes down to being self-aware
Mhm.
about who you are, uh, about your strengths, about your weaknesses. It's crazy how we have such a gap
Yeah.
of the lack of self-awareness. One of the things that I see a lot, okay,
Mhm.
is that there are people
Yeah.
that ask me out for coffee, want to pick my brain, and so on. And it's wild how many people I sit with them for the third time, okay,
Okay.
for the third time, and we have the same conversations all over again,
Mm.
and it's because they still don't see it. They don't have the self awareness
Yeah.
to see what the gap is,
Yeah.
you know, to see what the issue is, what's
Mm.
missing, and so on. And so I think that you know you are right that in so many ways social media has 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 really exploited,
Mhm.
you know, dating and sex and
Yeah.
marriage and relationships and so on. And so it's very important that you surround yourself with healthy relationships,
Yeah.
you know, uh, 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 with healthy voices, with wise voices, that will be honest with you, that
Yeah.
will tell you the truth, even if it hurts your feelings. Secondly, be self aware.
Yeah.
Be self aware.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's okay. You are who you are. That's how the Lord made you. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Period. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? But you have to get to the place of self awareness. And it's the only way you can come to discover, okay, I need to work on this area,
Mhm. Right.
or I'm missing it here and so on. And then number three, look at this. Men, be a man and go ask her out. Go ask her out for coffee. Like, if you see her at church, say, hey, I've seen you around here and so on.
Mhm.
My name is so and so. I mean, and hey, could we hang out for
Yes, please don't send a text or a DM.
coffee at Summer
Ask
Moon
her
or
in
something? You know what I'm
person.
saying? Now, if you got
Call
game,
her.
you're like, hey, I noticed you noticing me, so I'm making notice that I was noticing you too. You know what I'm saying? If you got some game, hey, you know what I'm saying?
You're
No,
so
but
dumb.
but 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 I mean, don't be afraid
Right.
of rejection. You know why? Because guess what? There's gonna be another one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She ain't the only Coca-Cola bottle on the planet.
Stop.
Nate, you got options, bro. You know what I'm saying? Keep it
I
moving.
think that actually men right now have more options than the girls and the women.
But
But
I mean, we can talk. I uh, and I do not consider myself a relationship expert. You know what I'm
no,
saying?
I don't either. But I think that you're
But
as a man and like you're
but
married and
yeah,
people see that.
but don't overcomplicate life. Like, people overcomplicate life.
Yeah. A
People
thousand.
make it harder than it needs to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how much unneeded stress and anxiety
And
we put on
drama.
ourselves.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's like, dude, stop watching the YouTube videos. Stop watching the drama. If she says no, move on. Who cares? I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's wild.
I
You
know.
know, make it a goal to be unoffendable and drama free. Trust me.
Oh, life is
Trust
so
me.
much better.
Opportunities just randomly find
I
you.
agree. I
It's
agree.
crazy.
That's so good. Be unoffendable.
And drama
Yes,
free.
drama free.
And that's it.
That's please. Yes and please. Yes
You
and
know what I'm saying?
amen.
Yes and amen.
um okay, I want to talk about a lot of the conversations we have on here is, and my goal is talk about things that are hard, right? We can do hard things. Like you said, just go ask to grow out. Yeah, it's hard. Everyone's heart is different, but who cares?
Well, yeah.
Do it anyway.
I mean, hard is relative, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. It
Maybe
is
awkward. You're kind
relative.
of embarrassed. You're
Like,
shy. You
you're
know what I'm saying?
sweating, but like, I like to talk about all the hard things. And so, one of the things that we walked together in, but you walked in with Esther 2 years ago, was losing baby Mordecai. And so, you're always happy, Steve. You're always happy. Like, you have been upset twice in my life that I know of as an adult. And it was when you were setting boundaries. um, and then the other time was when I was not moving when the Lord said to move. And I remember you were like, "Did you hear or did you not hear?" And I remember Esther was like, "Whoa, whoa." But because we have that relationship, right? You can't talk like that to everybody.
Yeah.
And not everyone is thick skinned or grew up with boys like I did. But you're always happy. And when you were walking through the pregnancy with Esther, with Mordecai, knowing what the outcome may be, what did you do to continue being filled with joy and being strong? Because I know that you didn't share it with a lot of people, but you're happy like no one would know. And so you weren't like, woe is me. You weren't making excuses. You were still showing up for work. You were still showing up for family. And I'm sure you processed it your own way. But what were one of the things that you took a hold of that led you to continue walking in joy?
Looking back, I think it was so. One of the things I do a lot that I consider myself is in touch with my emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and so I cried a lot. I mean, like I wept so much. I would weep with Esther.
Hmm.
I would weep in my car. I would call my mom and just cry. I didn't want to cry now. It's just
No, me too.
thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? I would call my friends and say, "Hey, man, I'm gonna cry," and like I would cry, and then they would be like, just kind of like awkward and silence and so on. And so, not expecting them to say anything, but just
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I'm gonna cry."
Yeah.
I would be in my car at a red light. It would take forever, and then I would just start crying, thinking about, man, like this really stinks. We have to walk through this,
Yeah.
And and I, I mean, separate, separate from the um, the um, ah, separate from the death of my son. I think what would really hurt me even more was Esther, and like as a mom, she's carrying him, and I mean, there's a emotional bond
Yeah.
that's built with a baby in the womb and mom that I knew I would never have. And so it would just crush me thinking, oh my gosh, how must Esther feel right now? This has to be so hard. And so one of the things that I made sure was that I completely created opportunities for us to always be emotional about it. And so anytime Esther wanted to cry, it was never, hey, be strong.
Yeah.
Never. It was always like, you know what? Let's cry right now.
Yeah.
Because anytime she would cry, I would cry. Anytime I
Yeah.
would cry, she
She'd
would cry.
cry.
And
Yeah.
so it was like, you know what?
I know.
Let's just cry. Crying is powerful. It literally releases
Mhm.
anxiety
Mhm.
and stress.
Everything. I'm a huge proponent of
Like,
crying.
and so so I wept with God more than I ever have in my entire life, and so I questioned so much in private. I would say, God, why?
Yeah.
you know or I would ask him repeatedly, like, I've seen you heal people
Right.
from crazy things, like,
Right.
well, like, why won't you heal my son? And so I allowed myself to be completely honest in my human emotions with God.
Yeah.
And, like, uh, uh, never once would I feel that, like, he was like, why are you questioning me? I'm God. No, I always had this perspective that, like, he always wept with me,
Mm.
you know, where where he isn't afraid of your questions.
Yeah.
He isn't afraid of you, feeling emotions and having doubts. Like, he knows who he created.
Yeah.
He knows we are emotional people. And being that way does not make you less spiritual. It makes you human.
Right.
It makes you completely human. And so I had questions like, man, God, why won't you heal my son?
Yeah.
Dude, I've served you my entire life and this is how you treat me.
Mhm.
And like, he was never mad at me saying those things.
Right.
He was never angry at me questioning those things. Rather, my perspective of him was always like, hey, I'm weeping with you.
Yeah.
And so I made sure I always created the opportunity for that in my house
Mhm.
you can always ask
Yeah.
any question.
Yeah.
And the rule was that we don't need to have answers,
Yeah.
but we can ask,
Yeah.
you know? And so I feel that from that perspective, you know, we were able to process a lot of things, even though that, for a lot of it, we never had answers for
Yeah.
and so on. But one of the things that we made sure after we wept,
Yeah.
after we asked questions, after we expressed, like, our doubts,
Yeah.
we always went back to, but he's still a faithful God,
Yeah.
but he's still a good God.
Yeah.
And we can still trust that for whatever reason this is happening, we don't even have to have a reason.
Yeah.
But the fact that this is happening, we trust that he knows it's happening and he's
Mhm.
weeping with us
Yeah.
and he's with us. And that was the perspective. Go ahead and be human, but always go back and know that through it all, he still is God. He
Yeah.
still sits on his throne. It's a one of the perspectives that I personally had was that what was that in so many ways, Western Christianity is spoiled Christianity.
How so?
Well, you know, we we raise our fist and say, God, why didn't I get that promotion? And we get all mad and we get this and so on.
Yeah.
When someone today in the Middle East is literally being martyred because they believe in God.
Mm. Yeah.
Someone today is literally being killed because they were found with a Bible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone today is being born in a nation that isn't America.
Right.
And so, Western Christianity in so many ways has become spoiled Christianity. It's
Mm.
like, we over here it's prosperity, it's, living your best life,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, you know, blessings and I believe in all those. And if it happens, amazing.
Yeah.
Glory to God. But at the same time, if it doesn't happen, like right now, someone's being born in a nation that they're going to live the hardest life imaginable. And then here you are raising your fist about not being asked to speak somewhere,
That's true. Yeah.
and uh, 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 so from that perspective, I always told myself, okay, I have to walk through the death of my son,
Mm.
but I'm going to trust God. He knows. He knows. He can heal my son, or I have to walk through a crazy experience. My posture and perspective towards him is he's still God. He
Mm.
still sits on the throne, and so it's a mixture of things. Because was it hard? It was so hard. It was so intense. But at the same time, what an honor that I would be trusted by God to go through such a crazy experience. That,
Mm.
I mean, only He knows why. And
Yeah.
and looking back, I mean, how many I could we literally had thousands of DMs and emails from people all over the world that were encouraged. My faith was restored. Oh my gosh, I got healed. Just watching you guys, just seeing what you were saying. We also lost a child. I mean, it's crazy seeing on those. It's hard to see it in the present moment
Yeah.
because of the pain, the
Yeah.
human emotions, your thoughts, what you're going through,
Yeah.
but if you're able to have a higher perspective that his ways are higher than my ways. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, on the other side of every hardship, there's always purpose. There's always purpose. Nothing in life is without purpose. There's always purpose in pain. There's always purpose in blessing.
Yeah.
And so your perspective always has to be a heavenly
Perspective.
perspective.
Yeah. That's true. When so just really quick though, for people who don't know what we're talking about, baby Mordecai was diagnosed with trisomy 20.
18.
Oh, it's trisomy 18, which means that he had certain birth defects. And typically, when a woman is pregnant, um, you're given the option to either keep the baby or abort the baby
Hmm.
because the life expectancy is short,
Or
the
it's really challenging.
or challenging. And so when I had Esther on, we talked about it, about choosing life, knowing nothing, basically knowing the unknown, right? And how another mom walking through the same thing decided to abort her baby. And, politics aside, not politics aside, how I think it's wild how people and a lot of women I see on my social media say, I'm trying to protect my daughter's right to have an abortion. And I'm like, I'm sorry. What about the right of the baby, your grandbaby?
Yeah.
It's just, the there's so many perspectives that are skewed now. And then the perspective is, uh, when I asked you, you're living joyfully because you're believing that God is still good. God is still God. And I remember shortly after that, I walked in a season with my husband because his twin sister
Yeah. Passed away.
passed away. And when we were walking through that, I remember John and I talking, how do people do this and they don't know the Lord?
Mm-hmm.
What do they say? Or I can't fathom not walking with the Lord through this because He's our comforter. And just like you, uh, emotions, like the questions, like, Lord, why? You are the healer. And then because she was set on fire for the Lord, she loved the Lord.
Yeah, she did.
She
I knew
said,
Misty.
she
She was
said,
amazing.
I win anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, just that impacted so much because you're talking about hard giving up your kids, like giving your kids to the Lord. Like one of the things I tell Joey is this is a blip. This here, our life here, these decisions that we're making, they're a blip to eternity.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have all the answers, but God,
Yeah.
you know? And there is a peace about it because, when I say walking boldly into the calling that God placed in your life, people, I really wanted what you've done beautifully is talking about the the things that happened in your life that under societal terms you're not supposed to be successful. Under societal terms, the way you grew up, your speech impediment, you had all the odds stacked against you. You were not supposed to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Against societal terms would say you're first generation, you didn't grow up speaking English, you're a single mom, you don't come from money, you don't come from education, and look what you've built now. Look at the grit and the man of God that you are now, because glory to God that you are where you are now. Knowing the Lord did not mean that you didn't have heartbreak. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because you were a man of God didn't mean that, look, baby Mordecai had this diagnosis and he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
You were not immune to hardships. And so when people, like, I want to close and say, like, when the podcast is about walking in boldness and doing hard things, how would you say to someone who's like, I don't know the Lord, where do I start? What are some practical ways that you would say can help them walk in boldness?
One of the most powerful things that someone can have in life is is a is the words I use is a higher perspective of life,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and and uh, um and I think that usually when people use the term bold, it's because they're confronting something they're either afraid of
Mm-hmm.
and or they know it's going to be really hard, you know. And so one of the things that like one of the things we must understand uh, in life, like you said, that we will we will never we will never be void
Mm-hmm.
of hardships and pain
Yeah.
ever. Okay, and so understanding that really early on
Yeah.
will prepare you just mentally, spiritually, and emotionally that when something hard is in front of you,
Yeah.
when a hardship comes, like some things are a lot harder.
Mhm.
Like this might sound really weird, and some people might think that I'm weird, okay?
Okay.
But I am already preparing myself emotionally for when my mom enters heaven
Oh.
and she's gone. And I know it's going to be one of the hardest things of my childhood. And I'm going to weep, but I know it's coming. For some, no one expects like an accident or like, something to happen in life and so on. But but we must have the perspective that life is fragile.
Mhm.
Life can literally shift in a second. Everything changes. Everything can change
Yeah.
in a split second.
Mhm.
Everything can change, and that's why it's so important to have a eternal perspective.
Mhm.
So a higher perspective, but an eternal perspective, like we must understand that in everything, God knows.
Yeah.
Like he's in it.
Yeah.
Like he's not void of like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I had no idea that was gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite things about hardships, which just sounds weird, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't even hardships, you know what I'm saying? You know, because hardships come with heartbreaks a lot of times, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
It's just, but there are certain promises in the Bible that you can only access in hardships. For
Yeah.
example, Psalms 54 says that he's close to the brokenhearted. And so when your heart's broken,
Mm.
like what a perspective that wow, but he's closer.
Yeah. The Lord's near. Mhm.
I mean, it's a wild perspective because we're humans, and so for most people,
Yeah.
you know it's hard to come to a place emotionally and mentally where where you have the higher perspective and that eternal perspective, that like you truly believe the promises of God, that everything is working together
Yeah.
for the good
Yeah.
of those who love him, and so imagine that, you know after you grieve,
Mhm.
you can still rejoice, like, okay, there's still purpose in this.
Yeah.
God's still up to something in this.
Yeah.
Like, this hasn't ended now.
Yeah.
Like, here I am 2 years later, and someone's going to watch this,
Yeah.
you know, where Mordecai's life still has purpose
Mhm.
as time moves on and so on. And so, having that understanding that we have to operate life at a higher perspective, at a eternal perspective, understanding that things will come to us. So that's one aspect of like being bold
Yeah.
enough to know that when it comes, hey, this is life, but I know that God is going to be with me. And then on the other side of things is understanding that, I mean, this is a cheesy phrase, okay? This is such a cheesy phrase,
Say
okay? But you truly only have one life to live.
it. Yeah.
This is it. For the person that is like, oh, I don't want to put my face on social media, or I hate how I sound. Well, guess what? You don't have another face and you don't have another voice. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you were given what you were given,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? With a T. And so understanding that like with so many things, you don't have control to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only thing you can do is just overcome the thoughts in here,
Yeah.
the the mental hurdles that keep you back. Most fears, most of our fears are just thoughts. There's and I'll end here with this thought because I can talk all day about this,
That's good.
but there's a powerful verse. It's in First Corinthians, I believe it's chapter either 10 or 13.
Mm-hmm.
I'll- where the Apostle Paul says, "There are many voices in the earth, and none without significance." Okay, there are many voices in the earth, and none without significance.
Okay.
And so, so what he's saying here is that we live in a world
Yeah.
of of constant voices.
Yeah.
Like right now in this room, there are voices you're hearing besides my voice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so he says, and none without significance. So every single voice in the spirit world has significance, but it only has significance when you give it the power of significance. So,
That's good.
so what I mean by that is this: it only has power if you allow it to have power. So, like, I always envision it like this. You remember the cartoons where on
Mm-hmm.
one side here was a little angel,
Yeah.
and on this side
Yeah.
was a little devil, and then let's say you're in your vehicle, and it's early in the morning, you're excited, you have your coffee in your hand, and you're driving, and someone just comes in and just, I mean, barely misses you and cuts you off, and then you spill your coffee on your shirt, and all of a sudden you're all, and then there's one little voice in here that's saying, speed up and flip them off. How are you going to let them do that to you? And then this angel voice says, hey, just, oh wow, let it go. Do
Yeah.
not let it ruin your day. And so you have these voices that are fighting for you to give it significance. And so, according to the voice that you allow in your life,
Mm-hmm.
such will be the response of it. And so, you have to become self aware that in the moment of fear, when you have a choice, am I going to be bold
Mm-hmm.
or am I going to run in fear? That those are actual voices
Yeah.
in your life saying, hey, be afraid. This isn't going to work out. This isn't for you. You're not smart enough. You're ugly. You're this. You're that, and so on. And then you have this other voice that say, no, go for it.
Yeah.
It's going to work.
Yeah.
You're going to overcome this. Watch what happens. And so most of the time it's crazy because people listen to the voice that leaves them in fear.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and those that truly step into opportunities, th- those that truly step into potential, those that truly step into God given destiny, those that truly change the world are
Yeah.
those that respond to the right voices that usually come from heaven.
Yeah.
you know and so and so how do you become more bold is respond to the right voices
Mm.
in your life. Most of the time, people are responding to spiritual voices
Yeah. Yeah.
than physical voices. No one's telling you you're ugly. You're hearing that. It's a spiritual
Yeah.
voice.
Yes, that's
No
true.
one's telling you, oh my gosh, don't do this. You're not good enough. No one's physically saying that to you.
Yeah.
Now, it could be when you were younger, someone said that, and that voice still haunts you,
Yeah.
and it comes back and so on. But again, you have to learn how to discern
Yeah.
what voice you are going to give significance to.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, because all day I'm at my desk
Yeah.
and I am hearing all these voices and I'm continually saying nope, 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 and I'm saying yes, yes, yes to the things that I know that God speaks over me.
That's so good.
How do you become bolder is begin to discern and respond to the right voices.
Right. Good. Good. Thank you. Discernment. Love it.
There's a little nugget there, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Thank you so much for being on here.
It was so much fun. I hope I get invited back. Look at this. Comment on this video so it gets the most amount of comments
Yeah.
so I get invited back to this.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Love you.
Okay, love you too.
Thank you for listening to the Worthy Podcast. I hope you found this episode of value. Please subscribe, save, and send it to a friend. Thank you so much.